It's what you need to know.
Hello.
Like healthcare workers who steal from their patients.
If she did it to me, she can probably do it to other people as well.
Or charities traveling and partying using the public's money.
I'm Dillon with KSAT 12.
What? No, let's go.
Businesses that take but don't give back.
He still owes me $27,000. I don't have a bus.
And public workplaces where female employees are repeatedly harassed.
I'm nervous where I get my stomach aches just being there.
And those are just some of the stories tonight in a KSAT 12 one-hour special. KSAT Investigates, uncovering the truth.
Good evening and welcome to a KSAT Investigates one-hour broadcast.
I'm Dillon, Collier, investigative reporter.
And I'm Tim Gerber, investigative reporter.
And our goal is to inform you with the information you need to protect yourself, your families,
and your community with stories that cover everything from possible con artists
to charities that misspend your money,
to abuse and injustice in places both public and hidden. Which brings us to tonight's first story about a type of business that hits close to home. Here's Dillon Collier.
For many, they are the last resort, boarding homes, especially for the elderly and people with disabilities without a lot of money to spend. But KSAT Investigates has discovered many of these homes are unlicensed and uninspected, hiding in plain sight in residential neighborhoods in average family homes, but with conditions inside that can be horrifying. In April of this year, a curious thing happened at Methodist Hospital Stone Oak. Staff say a woman later identified as Julie Foster walked in and tried to convince them to release a terminally ill patient to her house on Antler Drive. Foster at first claimed she was the woman's mother. Then she said that she had legal power to act on the woman's behalf. Sensing something wrong, the hospital staff refused to let her go and Foster left. Staff from a hospice care company had also shown up with San Antonio police in tow. They had asked for the same patient and wanted to take her to the same Castle Hills address as Foster's. But according to an SAPD incident report, they too had left empty-handed after staff provided paperwork that the dying woman had decided to remain at the hospital. So what was going on here? Well, that terminally sick woman had been living with Foster, and now she wanted her back. Turns out Foster was running a boarding home, often a refuge for the very ill. Hand over your government benefits check, and the home's owner will take care of you and feed you. But many such residences are unregulated, meaning they fly under the radar of laws and ordinances, and as a result, don't deliver on what they promise.
If she did it to me, she can probably do it to other people as well. And she should be stopped.
Jeanne Chamberlain, a retired Air Force major and veteran of Operation Desert Storm, wishes she had had someone intervene when in 2017, a woman approached her at a rehabilitation center and said she could care for her.
This woman, Julie Foster, showed up and said, well, I can help you. You know, I'm a nurse and I'll look after you. Instead,
Chamberlain said she was forced to live in a storage room at this Antler Drive home that barely had enough room for her bed. Within months, Chamberlain's condition had deteriorated to the point she was taken to a Veteran Affairs hospital by ambulance. While she recovered in a medical ward, court records show Foster and Julie Clark, another woman living at the home described as a care employee, forged Chamberlain's signature on multiple checks, stealing thousands of dollars from the hospitalized vet. Foster and Clark were indicted for felony theft in June 2019. Both pled no contest months later and were granted deferred adjudication. Foster got her probation terminated and the case dismissed in August 2020. Clark, a felon with multiple theft convictions even before she cared for Chamberlain, remains on probation.
My belief is that if they're going to be taking care of people, that we should be able to inspect the home for health and safety like a business.
J.R. Trevino, mayor of Castle Hills, says officials there have tried to monitor Foster's operation as much as possible, but are limited in what they can do because it's unlicensed. And unlike the city of San Antonio, Castle Hills doesn't regulate boarding homes. meaning it lacks laws that cover residences housing the elderly or people living with physical disabilities or mental illness that are not related to the homeowner. In August 2017, Castle Hills Code Compliance searched the house after fire personnel assigned to a call there described garbage, filth, rot, and unsanitary conditions inside. A resident said he was one of up to 8 people living at the 2,800 square foot home. A lawsuit filed by the city against Foster the following year detailed significant code violations inside the home and that Adult Protective Services had visited the property after Foster's own daughter made an outcry about her mother's treatment of an elderly family member. It's a continuing problem Trevino wishes he had a solution for.
Not good. It's deeply concerning.
Charging paperwork from a separate felony case against Foster provides insight into why she moved her business to Castle Hills. After San Antonio police in June 2014 responded to the Stone Oak home, Foster acknowledged that 8 people were living there, that, quote, she did not care about these mentally retarded people and that she wanted them out of the house. When officers returned a day later, they were met with a strong, foul odor inside and found a woman slumped over at the kitchen table. The victim, who said she was not mentally stable, was covered in human feces and with an open leg wound draining into a bucket so much that the pus covered the bottom of her foot. The woman left in feces-soiled and urine-soaked clothes for as long as 3 months at a time. An officer also noted that the refrigerator was chained and padlocked to prevent anyone from opening it without a key. Foster admitted to police she was moving her boarding homes out of San Antonio to escape permitting and inspections. Years later, in March 2018, Foster was formally charged with 2 counts of injury to a disabled person, but the district attorney's office has no disposition information on the case. With no public records available regarding the adjudication of these charges, it is unclear whether they were ultimately dismissed or pursued. It's possible Foster attempted to have the arrest expunged from her record. Foster sold the property in late 2016 and no longer runs a boarding home there.
There's a severe shortage of housing.
Doug Beach is board president and executive director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness San Antonio.
People are really, honestly desperate for good places to live, and they probably take some options that they might not take otherwise.
We're with KSAT. Wanted to ask about the Stone Oak Methodist incident in April. Reached for comment.
Well, obviously you're here for a KSAT. Well, hi, everybody, remember me?
Foster offered little as far as a response to our questions before suggesting that we interview her away from her property.
Let's go to a park. Where can we go to a park where they have drinks? I got lemonade, never mind.
There's one off Lemonwood at Castle Hills City Hall. There's a park.
We can go there.
Perfect.
But after driving the short distance to City Hall, Foster apparently had a change of heart and instead beelined inside City Hall and got the police.
We're doing a story
You're
about
criminals.
404 Antler Drive.
You're criminals
What you did to
for
Jeanne
treating me this way.
Chamberlain?
Oh, Jeanne Chamberlain.
Foster then attempted and failed to have our crew cited for criminal trespassing.
Julie, obviously you're aware that if you don't want to talk to the media, you don't have to.
I already did.
That's on you.
The following day, as we attempted to gather footage of the property in question for this story, Foster directed a racist tirade at her neighbor.
You're into my country and you make on my street.
Then attempted to block our camera's lens.
Hello.
For Chamberlain, she hopes somehow, some way, Foster is stopped.
And for those of us that have served our country, it's really wrong that we are exposed to people like that who are only in it for financial gain and have no welfare concerns about us.
Last month, the district judge extended the probation of Foster's co-defendant, Julie Clark, for 2 years and required her to go through a mental health evaluation.
Coming up next, a San Antonio company has consumers across the country claiming they were taken for a real ride.
He is taking people's money and not providing a service.
When we come back to a KSAT Investigates special.
If you have a story tip for KSAT Investigates, just call 210-351-1212 or you can email us at ksatinvestigates@ksat.com. All calls and emails are confidential. It may sound like a strange thing to do, selling your home to move into a school bus, but this isn't just any bus. It's a customized vehicle, often with tile floors and wood paneling, a bathroom, and even sleeping quarters. It's called a schoolie, and it's part of a growing trend of couples and families choosing to live life on the road. But KSAT Investigates finds when it comes to buying one of these mobile homes, it's buyer beware, especially if you're dealing with one San Antonio business.
We gave him $75,000 total. It was going to be a $100,000 bill.
Jim and Trudy Krupacki hired Lone Star Schoolie Conversions to make this bus their home on the road. But their dreams soon took a wrong turn.
So this has left you all financially wrecked.
Yeah, it has. It has completely changed the trajectory of what we had built on for years for ourselves.
They say business owner Ben Potts told them he'd have their bus finished in 6 to 8 weeks. But when the couple came to pick their new home up in August last year, it wasn't done. They then found themselves living out of hotels as the weeks turned into months.
I mean, it was like being in a toxic relationship with no end.
Finally, in November, Potts told them the bus was finished, but
we knew it was a mess. Even though Ben was standing right in front of us telling us our bus was worth $100,000.
I mean, if you look at this, it looks like a junior high project.
Ross Taylor is a schoolie expert. He was shocked by the condition of the Krupacki's bus.
The tile is just attached directly to plywood. That'll pop loose here pretty soon.
He found all kinds of problems.
This wasn't attached to anything, so if they'd used the toilet, the urine would have run out on the floor.
His biggest concern, the number of electrical hazards he discovered, some of them potentially deadly.
There are things done in here that a first-week apprentice electrician wouldn't do. Up here, there's a 30-amp circuit breaker with 12-gauge wire, and 12-gauge wire is only rated to handle up to a 20-amp circuit breaker, so that's a fire hazard.
And then there was this.
If you do an internet search for suicide cable or widowmaker cord, you'll find this. So this plugs into the generator, and this plugs in here. When this is plugged into the generator, these are live. And that's why it's called a suicide cable.
You touch that,
Yeah, you can't buy these because they're not safe. I mean, they're super dangerous.
KSAT Investigates has identified more than 20 customers who say they didn't get what they paid for.
A rainstorm hit on the way home, and we found out that the bus was completely leaking. In every single weld they did, pretty much, water was pouring through the bus.
He still owes me $27,000. I don't have a bus.
We got there and nothing had been done. Our bus had not been moved, not been touched.
Zach and Taryn Marks got fed up dealing with all the delays and pulled their bus before it was finished. But not before they say Ben Potts offered to make things right by adding more solar panels with extra materials he had.
This is what his extra solar laying around was. All different wires, different ages, not the gauge they're supposed to be for that circuit running through them.
They say they're now out $15,000 and will need to pay even more to fix the damage Lone Star Schoolie caused.
So right now you're at Lone Star Schoolie headquarters.
Okay.
And here is where all the magic comes through.
Ben Potts invited me to his warehouse to see how he operates.
So what happens is we actually cut the entire bus front to back, and we raise it anywhere from about 10 to 22 inches.
But when we questioned him about his many angry customers, the answers didn't come easily.
So what's the, I'm sorry, one more time.
The buses that we've seen have been described as death traps, fire hazards, accidents waiting to happen.
If there was anything like that, we'd be on it, and we'd love to fix that.
He blamed most of the problems on a former contractor.
And I started contracting out a couple of builds because we started getting very busy. And we noticed that every single one that he touched are the ones that are upset.
He also blamed his customers, saying they're out to get him.
So you feel that these people are damaging your business?
They've destroyed my company.
Potts did eventually take some responsibility, admitting he took on more customers than he could handle, which resulted in the subpar work. He says he will now pay to have the buses fixed or give customers full refunds.
We're not going to let anybody go without at least being refunded back or helped or spoken to directly.
But this customer says it's all lip service.
My bus was delivered mid-December and we're now in May, and it's been the back and forth. Oh, we're going to fix it. Oh, we're going to do this. Oh, we contacted this person to fix it.
Air Force veteran Lauren Doherty was horrified when Lone Star Schoolie delivered her bus.
There's like no windshield whatsoever.
No, it's completely cracked.
Was the guy driving it like that?
Yeah, and it fell in on him.
Also, the floors were rotted out.
This is the old bus floor. That's the mold and rust.
On top of it, when Doherty checked the title, she says she learned the bus had been flooded, something she says Potts never disclosed to her. And even worse,
He also jumped the title, so it was never transferred into his name. He doesn't, so I have to get a bonded title.
she also says she was contacted by another Lone Star Schoolie customer who paid for a bus they never received. That customer had the exact same title as Doherty.
And so they went that whole time not knowing that their bus was sold out from under them.
So we asked Potts about it.
That particular client I can't talk about due to litigation and due to actual police reports.
But he says he's paying that customer back.
So the bus refund was given, and then we're actually still on a plan with them refunding the rest of the bill as well too.
So you're paying them back as you speak?
Yes, sir. In no way would we, that's stealing.
I filled out the small, yeah.
Doherty came to San Antonio 2 weeks ago and filed a lawsuit in small claims court.
You know, if I can do something about it to make sure that somebody else isn't hurt, whether or not I get my money back is minuscule in the larger scheme of things.
She was joined by Joe Baker, an Army veteran who's suing Potts for taking $15,000 but not doing any work on his veteran outreach bus. He has a court date on June 7th.
This is criminal. He is taking people's money and not providing a service, or just blatantly just ripping people off.
So we got some water coming through here. We got some cooking that can take place.
Actually, Potts has not been charged with any crime. Despite all the troubles he's facing, Potts is still converting buses, and he says doing it even better. And he's now hoping to win back customers.
We're gonna get their money back to them. We're gonna take care of them. We're not gonna leave nobody high and dry.
But his former customers say they don't believe a thing he says.
What I would love for him is to be honest. But I just don't think it'll happen. I just don't think he's capable.
When this story first aired in May, owner Ben Potts offered up what he called happy, satisfied customers. But when I reached out, none of those customers returned my calls or texts. Here's how Potts responded when I caught up with him as he was leaving a recent court hearing.
I still haven't talked to any happy customers.
Hey, whenever you go and harass them, Tim, and you and all them, I'm not going to do that to them. They don't deserve that.
For the record, KSAT Investigates only contacted each customer Potts provided one time. While we never heard back from them, I was contacted by several more former and current customers who were very unhappy and still trying to get their buses and their money back from Potts.
Do you still feel that you have done nothing wrong here and you're going to pay people back? Has anybody asked to be paid back?
Some people have reached out, and we're getting with the legal team that's going to get that all together, and we're responding to those people as they're coming in.
Potts was in court that day to face veteran Joe Baker. Baker filed a suit against Potts in small claims court. After hearing arguments from both sides, the judge ruled in Baker's favor, ordering Potts to pay him $15,000.
Are you going to pay him his $15,000?
Yeah. I think if he does, it's going to take me to get law enforcement involved or the courts involved. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a painful process trying to get my money back.
Potts is now appealing the ruling. Baker has hired an attorney to fight the appeal and to collect his money.
They left a bunch of garbage in the middle of the warehouse here.
Shortly after our first story aired, Potts abruptly moved out of his warehouse south of downtown and moved into this new location in China Grove. Potts said it was for safety reasons.
So if you don't have any money to pay me, how'd you pay for that?
Joe Baker just wants to know what happened to his and everyone else's money.
I just think he's taking people's money and doing a shell game between his 3 LLCs, just moving money around and crying poverty that he doesn't have the money. But He obviously took everybody's money, so it's somewhere.
Now, we should say that Benjamin Potts has not been charged with any crime in connection with the handling of Lone Star Schoolie customers, but he does have more civil suit cases pending. We'll let you know what happens.
They say they were harassed, assaulted, and even groped. They're women working for the city of San Antonio.
You're not supposed to be touching. No matter what part of the body, you keep your hands to yourself.
In our 1-hour investigative special. All they wanted to do was work. But women employed by the city of San Antonio say they felt like moving targets, subjected to hair pulling, groping, and come-ons by the men who supervised them at the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center. But now they're saying enough is enough. Our story begins in the bowels of the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center last August. Surveillance footage captured near a loading dock shows maintenance employee Maria Villegas walking with coworkers when, for a still unexplained reason, her supervisor, Juan Cortez, grabs the back of her hair and yanks it.
It happened in seconds.
For Villegas, a domestic abuse survivor, the incident exposed old wounds.
I had buried it inside of me to proceed in life as a normal person. But when he did that to me, it just brought back everything. And I was right back where I was.
The assault resulted in Villegas being diagnosed with neck strain. Despite going to counseling, she now shows up to every shift with a feeling of dread.
I'm nervous where I get my stomach aches just being there.
A city spokeswoman noted Cortez's 19-year work history and no prior discipline when confirming the act resulted in a 5-day suspension. Cortez was also moved to another part of the convention center to prevent any further interaction with Villegas. But sadly, it's been far from her only negative interaction with a male supervisor. In June, building maintenance officer Gilbert Martinez resigned a day after Villegas said she went to Human Resources and made a formal complaint. She claims Martinez previously groped her in his office and sent her what she called filthy messages on Facebook, describing his genitals, asking to see her, quote, tamale, and writing that he, quote, wanted you to kiss on my hot dog emoji. City officials confirmed a complaint was filed against Martinez and that he resigned, but have not said why. A second female maintenance employee who asked that we not name her described an incident early in her tenure in which a male supervisor followed her into a room without cameras and asked if she wanted to play a game, telling her to undo a button on her blouse every time he said a specific phrase out loud. She claims the city determined there was not enough hard evidence to find him at fault for rule breaking and that he too later stepped down.
He told me I could see her underwear because she had her legs open.
A third maintenance employee, this woman, asked that we not show her face and said she finally had enough of the sexual comments and the moaning and groaning coming from crew leader Robert Crespo. So she recorded him and filed a formal complaint. Personnel records show a day after Crespo was placed on administrative leave last fall, he resigned. The paperwork includes no mention of the reasons he was placed on leave or why he ultimately left his position with the city. It was just the beginning of her workplace nightmare.
I want you to go back there and do it again.
She described 3 separate verbal attacks in less than a month, directed at her by her most recent crew leader, each of them taking a greater and greater toll on her.
I was so stressed, emotionally stressed, and I threw up in my car.
In late April, after she says her complaints to upper management went nowhere, she went to City Hall to complain to the mayor and started crying. So what happened next? She says she was led to a meeting room that had employees from Metropolitan Health and other city departments. Concerned that she might harm herself, they eventually took her to a hospital.
And I realized, oh my God, they put me in the psych ward.
A city spokeswoman, citing privacy concerns, said she couldn't talk about the City Hall incident. The woman claims her emergency detention lasted several days. At last check, the crew leader accused of verbally assaulting her was still working for the city.
They talk about core values a lot. teamwork, integrity, innovation, professionalism. They can't even practice what they preach. A bunch of lies. It just looks good on paper. They treat us like cattle, like we have no rights because we're maintenance workers.
Which brings us back to that hair pulling incident. Despite the video evidence and an admission from Supervisor Juan Cortez himself that he had pulled the employee's hair, nearly a year went by and law enforcement took no action against him. But guess what? Just days after KSAT Investigates showed this footage to the public, authorities finally issued a misdemeanor assault warrant for Cortez's arrest. He continued to show up for work another 2 weeks before turning himself in. Both Cortez and city officials contend they were unaware of his arrest warrant.
The people up cover a las personas.
That's not right.
But female maintenance employees say the saga exemplifies the dysfunction inside the city-run building.
You're not supposed to be touching. No matter what part of the body, you keep your hands to yourself.
Flora Adame has worked for the city more than 20 years, taking on the back-breaking work of setting up convention halls and cleaning the more than 500,000 square foot building.
When it comes to us, nobody cares.
A stream of complaints against Cortez were put on the record last fall. Weeks before a camera captured him pulling Maria Villegas' hair, he was accused of grabbing the same woman's arm and putting it behind her back like a police officer taking someone into custody. A separate maintenance worker told City Human Resources in September she previously witnessed Cortez yank a woman on a dolly out from under a stage by her ankles. A fourth complaint against Cortez, filed by Adame, alleges he put a cold soda can on the back of the neck of an unsuspecting female employee.
She went like that.
What kind of person is Juan Cortez from your experience?
Bad people.
Bad people.
Bad men.
This maintenance employee, who's worked for the city nearly 6 years, asked that we not reveal her identity. She recently sat down with us and brought along her own complaints against Cortez that she claims went nowhere.
Le gusta hacer el bullying.
In Spanish, she described him as a bully who pits city workers against each other. Officials have refused to make Patricia Musquiz-Cantor, Executive Director of Convention and Sports Facilities, available for an interview. Documents confirm terminating Cortez for the hair-pulling incident was on the table late last August, but the punishment was shortened to 5 days after Musquiz-Cantor spoke with an HR administrator. A city spokeswoman failed to elaborate on what went into that agreement, but that the city stands by its discipline decision. Adame says it's more proof of leadership letting down a vulnerable portion of its workforce.
You just don't say anything. Don't even promise, because promising doesn't work at all.
Cortez is free on bond. His attorney did not respond to multiple requests seeking comment for this story. City officials confirmed Cortez returned to work after addressing his warrant, and no further action will be taken against him unless, quote, substantive additional information comes out. When we come back, hundreds of thousands of dollars meant to help the public, spent on trips, limousines, and even a $32,000 motorcycle.
Markeisha, I'm Dillon with KSAT 12. We'll hear about the funds that were used from New Life.
It's a noble idea. Take millions of Texas tax dollars and give it to local charities that are supposed to help young women through their pregnancies and care for their newborns. The problem, KSAT Investigates found that at one of those nonprofits right here in San Antonio, something had gone very wrong with that money.
How do we have $1 million contract? We have we can barely afford diapers and wipes.
Meet JJ, a former caseworker for A New Life for a New Generation, the charity with the hopeful sounding name. Texas data shows it is one of the state's top recipients of funding, with reimbursements of more than $1 million last year. And yet, JJ says,
everybody was aware that something was wrong financially, but nobody knew quite the extent of what was happening.
They say sometimes there were missed payrolls and that the organization also started cutting back on how many diapers and baby formula it was supposed to give out to its clientele, mainly lower income mothers. So where was the money going? This is Markeisha Reed, president and founder of A New Life, and as it turns out, an experienced traveler, like her trip to Las Vegas in late September 2020. Time to have some fun, she posted on social media as she hit the Strip, rode in this limousine packed with friends and family, and much more, with the cost, including flights and hotel, totaling more than $20,000, paid for by A New Life for a New Generation. But it didn't stop there. 3 months later came Miami. Then it was back to Vegas in March, with all expenses covered by the charity's bank account. And finally, in June 2021, another group jaunt to Puerto Rico, where Reed visited San Juan, after the charity wired nearly $9,000 to Reed's hotel.
It sounds like an egregious misuse of tax dollars.
Texas Representative Donna Howard is the chair of the Texas Women's Health Caucus. She has repeatedly expressed concerns about the state program New Life falls under, and what she says is a crucial lack of oversight about expenses.
There was no data, and there still, in my opinion, is relatively little data that provides any kind of accountability for this program.
And when it comes to A New Life for a New Generation, KSAT Investigates discovered the lavish trips were just the tip of the iceberg.
Like a Polaris slingshot motorcycle, frequently found on social media, driven by a family member of Reed's. The price, more than $32,000 paid in total by A New Life for a New Generation. But for Reed, it wasn't all just fun and games when it came to using the charity's resources and funding. That's because records show some of it went to her own for-profit business, R&J CBD Smoke and Vapor Lounge, conveniently located a block from her charity's headquarters, something JJ says led to charity employees being siphoned off.
More than half of the janitorial staff would be over at R&J's, and the half that was left over was so overwhelmed with all the work to be done on the west side, they didn't have time to go and take steps to the east side.
And that's not all. 20 months of the charity's bank statements reveal questionable expenditures, like this $2,000 check signed by Reed to a builder hired to remodel R&J. The woman, who asked that we not use her name, said she took measurements and pictures at New Life, but said any actual work by her was done at the smoke shop.
To see this happening in our town, I mean, it hurts.
Jason Mesa is regional director of the Better Business Bureau of San Antonio, which also accredits and approves charities through its Wise Giving Alliance. He says that just to look at New Life's taxes shows even from a distance something was amiss.
Expenses don't match up with what's going on with the money coming in. A lot of things just don't add up.
For example, check records show Reed has been paid tens of thousands of dollars by New Life for vehicles, including more than $32,000 for this Dodge Charger alone, even though title records show it's still in her name and was originally bought by Reed for far less than that amount. The Kelley Blue Book estimate for the Charger puts its value at just over half of what Reed was provided by her nonprofit for it. There was this check, $25,000 of the charity's money for this plot of land at 6743 Buena Vista Street. Why? Just 11 days after the deed was finalized, the Texas Department of Agriculture granted a member of Reed's family this license to grow industrial hemp at that location. Later, Reed bragged to her Instagram followers, quote, "I can now grow CBD." So we had some questions and caught up with Reed outside of her smoke shop.
Markeisha, I'm Dillon with KSAT 12. We'll hear about the funds that were used from New Life to pay for the hemp lot on Buena Vista.
What? No, come on, let's go. Let me get him in.
Sure.
But moments later,
I need my records back.
through a locked door, Reed told us that she did not want to look bad on TV. So how did all of this happen? We repeatedly asked the Texas Pregnancy Care Network, which distributes the state's funding to A New Life, to do an interview with us. The agency declined, but Mesa has an answer.
It's conflict of interest. Down to the nuts and bolts. It's a huge conflict of interest.
What's he talking about? Mesa found a big problem in A New Life's tax records. It's the organization's board of directors. It's 3 members who are supposed to oversee the finances of the charity. But who were the 3? 2 of them were relatives of Reed, and the third person, Markeisha Reed herself. Once again, Representative Donna Howard.
How do we prevent this sort of misuse from happening with state dollars again?
Good question, and I think that's something that we need to explore.
Just 2 days after we aired our first reports on A New Life for a New Generation, the Texas Health and Human Services Commission froze the charity's funding, leading to the closure of one office and layoffs at many levels of the nonprofit. The charity is no longer considered a state subcontractor. To date, HHSC has been able to get back a little over $68,000 that had been paid to New Life in reimbursements. In late April, the nonprofit sold off the plot of land on Buena Vista Street for a loss.
It was the mountain that no one could move. A mountain of trash, that is.
Can I talk to you? Without a camera.
So what happened next? Find out when we come back to our 1-hour special, KSAT Investigates, Uncovering the Truth.
If you want more on these and other KSAT Investigates stories, you can scan this QR code with your smartphone or go to ksat.com/KSAT-investigates.
It went on for 8 years, an illegal dump that grew and grew from a big mess to a towering mountain that you could actually see from the highway, as neighbors and politicians all tried to get the landowner to clean it up. And along the way, we got involved.
There was a lot happening on this neglected and abused piece of land in Spring Branch when we stopped by last fall.
See the pile is segregated. That's a segregated pile. Looks like trash, but it's not.
Local resident and businessman Kevin Ellis is the man responsible for all that activity.
Right here is where, see those bales that are on that truck?
Yeah.
The bales were stacked 30 foot high here and all the way in. So we've made impact back here already that nobody can see.
He recently bought the property and is using his experience clearing sites to remove the massive mess.
We're here to clean up the eyesore that we have to drive by every day. My family goes to the river and the lake here like everybody else. And we're nestled in between some of the most beautiful country in Texas, in my opinion. Yeah. And for this to be here is just an eyesore, so we're going to work on it until we're done.
High above the 3.6-acre plot, it's easy to see what Ellis has accomplished in the short time since he bought the troubled property. This is what it looked like in 2018 when we first started investigating the man who made the mess.
Can I talk to you? Without a camera.
At the time, William Bill Easley was running an illegal recycling company on the land that he was leasing. Within 4 months of starting We Recycle Texas in 2014, state regulators were after him for numerous violations. His permit to operate was suspended, but Easley continued to take in tons of materials that quickly piled up. By 2016, investigators from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality were visiting the site. In 2018, the Texas Attorney General sued Easley and landowner Ed Reifenberry.
It's been a nightmare. And he was doing decent, and then he just stopped recycling stuff and just kept taking stuff in.
A judge granted the state a permanent injunction and ordered Easley to begin cleaning up the property. When he failed to comply, Easley was arrested for contempt of court, twice in 2019. Reifenberry attempted to take over the cleanup, but quickly found himself in way over his head. He eventually agreed to sell the land to Ellis, who has more than 25 years' experience in demolition and commercial site clearing.
This is probably one of the worst ones, not the biggest ones we've done, but one of the worst ones, one of the most just absolutely ignored environmentally properties that we've ever done.
Ellis agreed to buy the land and take on the responsibility to properly clean it up as ordered by the state.
They told me what they expected and what they wouldn't put up with, and they understood after a few conversations that I knew what I was doing, and they let me go to work.
So far, Ellis estimates he's removed more than 150 tons of material, focusing first on the stuff that can actually be recycled, items someone paid Easley to take that Ellis is now paying to have removed.
I mean, there's piles of things that just scream he was being an unprofessional recycler. And there's probably 50,000 remote controls over there that I've got to deal with. You know, all of that stuff comes out of my pocket, the transportation. Right. So that, that load alone just to get the guy up there and back is going to be, right at $1,000.
Kevin's done a great job. He's done everything that he said he was going to do.
Spring Branch Mayor James Mayer pleased to see the land finally getting the attention it deserves. But what about the man that made the mess? Should he be let off the hook?
Well, he's bailed him out to an extent. But to my mind, there's still a criminal offense that was committed that I believe he should be pursued for. He deserves to participate financially. I mean, he created the mess. He should help remediate it.
Ultimately, it's up to the state to decide what penalty Easley could face. But for now,
it puts a smile on my face when I drive by and see the progress and see, the truckloads of stuff coming out of here.
So just how long will it take to finally clear the land and turn it into something positive?
Tim, we want it done by tomorrow. It's costing us a bunch of money, so we're trying to be smart along the way. I would assume that in the 4 to 6 month range, you'll see a significant difference out here. We're going to do something productive with the property, and if we in turn decide to sell it, then we're going to make sure that whoever buys it, contract-wise, is bound to something productive for the community.
The land is not completely cleared. When we stopped by in July, about 75% of the trash had been removed. The property was also recently sold by Ellis to a new owner, and we're waiting to hear what they plan to do with the property. According to the Texas Attorney General's office, they are not currently pursuing any charges against Bill Easley or Ed Reifenberry.
He was a fallen first responder, honored across the country.
I looked in his eyes and my husband was gone.
So why is Bexar County suing his widow for his benefits? It's next when we return. There's no doubt being a first responder is a dangerous job, which was never more true when in 2020, COVID-19 became a new threat for those who deal with the public. So you'd think when a sheriff's deputy is one of the first to die from COVID-related causes, Bexar County would want to provide for his widow and family. Well, think again. It started on a Monday with a dry cough while working at the Bexar County Jail Annex. But by Thursday, Deputy Timothy De La Fuente had full-blown COVID-19 and was too weak to walk out of his far north side home. Outside, as paramedics struggled to put on their hazmat suits before going in, inside, his widow Pauline remembers.
And when I took his glasses off and I was looking at him, and I looked in his eyes and my husband was gone. He wasn't breathing. There was nothing behind those eyes.
The April 2020 death of the 27-year BCSO veteran struck a somber chord. A COVID-19 test taken days before Deputy De La Fuente's passing confirmed he was positive for the virus, and the sheriff's office quickly labeled it an on-duty death. The stretchy cloth mask found by Pauline in the pocket of his uniform, no match for a disease that had surged through the building where he worked. The loss of Deputy De La Fuente left a massive void in Pauline's life. The couple had lived with one another, carrying themselves as husband and wife for 14 years.
Figure out how to, get my lawn cut, take the trash out, bills. My husband took care of all of that.
A 100 Club of San Antonio luncheon honored the fallen this past May, including Deputy De La Fuente. There, it was revealed that 10 of the 15 area first responders who died in the line of duty in recent years did so from COVID-19 related complications. The lunch, the latest recognition for Deputy De La Fuente, as his widow has crisscrossed the country to accept medals and declarations honoring his legacy. But Pauline's story is not that of a widow who's been taken care of by the county where her husband proudly served. Far from it. Court records show Bexar County is trying to take away Deputy De La Fuente's death benefits and, believe it or not, force his widow to pay back the cost of cremating him. It's been a long, hard road for Pauline. In July 2020, the county denied her initial claim for benefits, so her case then went before an administrative judge twice in 2021. The county's argument that Deputy De La Fuente did not contract COVID during the scope of his employment for BCSO, that Pauline was not Deputy De La Fuente's legal spouse at the time of his death, and that she failed to request in writing that her denied benefits claim be reprocessed, once the state declared that first responders were likely to have contracted COVID while working, After the administrative judge overseeing the case sided with Pauline both times, the county appealed both times. And in late January of this year, filed suit against Pauline in state district court, seeking to end the weekly death benefits she receives, which total less than $4,000 a month, and forcing her to pay back the $1,900 it cost to cremate her husband.
If he had been shot in the line of duty, there would be no question about this.
Lieutenant Jeremy Payne, former president of the Deputy Sheriff's Association of Bexar County, said the ongoing legal fight could have a ripple effect for first responder families across Texas.
You asked him to come in, you asked him to serve, he did his job, and he paid for that with his life. And for you to come back and try and hurt his family by taking away financial benefits that the state has already approved is just horrific.
County officials declined our interview requests, citing the pending litigation, although Sheriff Javier Salazar has not commented publicly on it. In a May 9th email to the county's workers' compensation claims specialist, he called the filing against a grieving law enforcement widow reprehensible. Quote, "I can tell you I strongly disagree with denial of benefits, and I find it insulting to Timothy's memory if his wife is indeed being sued for pursuing something countless other law enforcement families are rightfully being afforded, all while she is clearly still dealing with the loss of her spouse. For Pauline, a loss in court would mean a return to the workforce at the age of 70.
My husband gave almost 28 years to the citizens of Bexar County. He worked there more than half his life. His loyalty and dedication was unwavering.
Attorneys for Pauline have asked for a jury trial in this case. She said she continues to receive Deputy De La Fuente's death benefits while the sides await trial, but they were temporarily halted while the case was under appeal last year. We'll be right back. Well, that's it for our 1-hour special, KSAT Investigates, Uncovering the Truth.
Thank you for your time. For the KSAT Investigates team and all our colleagues here at KSAT 12, good night. The Night Beat is next.